News review. That's right. I used to do a news review so many eons ago. I think it's just about time to pick it up again. Here we go. So technically this is news review number 5, but it's been a bit of a hiatus, so we're gonna go ahead and just pick up right where we left off, folks. First up, there's a lot of talk about these Oath Keepers for the January 6th trial that's taking place relatively recently. I know there's a bunch going on today, and there's been a bunch of buildup up into today. And the big question is, who are these Oath Keepers? Well, quite frankly, they're a group of really motivated individuals that were under the political spell of a very charming individual that decided, hey, we should all show up at this particular day and show our love and support for losing the election. Now keep in mind, what the Oath Keepers did on this day was nothing in particularly too violent or overly violent. It was just very borderline definition of a pseudo coup. And what I mean by this is kind of a failed attempt to take over the government, but without fully committing yourself. My biggest beef here isn't necessarily that to say Trump won or lost, but it's more of the fact that he clearly played his cards in this scenario on January 6th. And unfortunately, in my opinion, again, I think he faltered when the moment was hot. You know, he kind of created this environment to say, hey, go out there and support me to the maximum effort. But then he was nowhere to be found at the front of this crowd. Why? Because I guess he just really wanted to troll America. If he wanted to take over the United States government, he should have been leading that charge into the Capitol Hill. Quite frankly, I didn't observe any politician on January 6th that was definite, you know, oh, you got to stop him, besides Nancy Pelosi, but does she really count as a human at this point? And with no one really to stand in the way of Trump, Trump could have led that charge into Capitol Hill and probably would have been less violent. I think with people versus security guards, there's a clash. But if you can imagine Trump was in the middle of that, the security guards probably would have parted ways a little bit more. I suspect that Trump didn't want to commit to this because of two reasons. Either one, he would legitimately be fearful that he would lose out on this coup if he participated, or the more likely scenario, he never really had any interest in taking over the US government. He just wanted to troll people. So troll he did. And now these poor bastards who are on trial are suffering the consequences of an overly motivated individual who just couldn't be bothered to get out of bed that day. I'm not quite sure that's who we want to be sacrificing our lives for to take over our government. And of course, now Trump is running for 2024 for the obvious reasons of to stay out of jail. I mean, let's face it, at this point, the mounting evidence, the mounting criticism, because he failed to take over January 6th, it's just not looking good for him. To quote the famous Cersei from Game of Thrones, when you play the Game of Thrones, you win or you die. Well, Trump's not quite dead, but he didn't win. As for the poor souls on trial today, this will clearly build up more and more in the future, but they're just going to put people in jail left and right. If you look historically back on situations similar to this, typically those who revolt win or they lose. And in the event they lose, they were put in jail or executed. We, of course, live in a more distinguished society these days, so we can look forward to them just being jailed for 5 to 20 years, and then once they get out, I'm sure they'll have some kind of famous vlog. No one's put to the sword these days for failing to take over the government. Speaking of taking over the government, what in the world is going on with Russia's Putin? This guy is all over the place. First of all, Russia was already low on manpower, low on economic resources, so they pivot to Ukraine, thinking that was a leftover battle that they kind of won and want to take more advantage of. Putin really wants Ukraine. I'm not here to say that he should have Ukraine or he shouldn't have Ukraine. I think the general consensus of the global economy suggests that countries' borders should be left alone as they are. They don't really want to see new countries created, and they don't want to see old countries absorbed or annexed into bigger countries. But the question on everyone's mind is Putin crazy enough to do anything with nukes? Everything in the news articles indicates he's moving nukes around, nukes are disappearing, nukes are under his bed. They don't know where everything's going. And all we can do is really speculate on what he's doing with these nuclear weapons. He's clearly made plenty of threats regarding the interference of Ukraine, and he'd probably extend that into interference with any neighboring country. So what's the United States and other countries to do? Well, what they've always done whenever they have a war with someone else through a proxy war, they give guns and weapons to another country and say good luck. I'm not sure if the US is helping or if they're causing more deaths and problems just because they're delaying the inevitable. I'm not saying Putin would be a good leader of Ukraine, but let's look at the after effects of this. What is going to happen to Ukraine once Putin takes over? Let's just assume he takes over the whole country. Then what? As far as the Ukrainian people go, they're going to have maybe a slightly different tax rate, maybe different food production situations, but the overall picture isn't going to change. The team name that you're now a part of has changed to some degree, but it's really like an NBA basketball team changing from one city to the next. The Oakland Raiders, as a good example. No disrespect to the people of Ukraine, but I'm just thinking on a much larger meta scale. If somebody comes over and takes over your country and doesn't murder everybody, that's already a pretty good start. I'm not saying that we should give this country to invaders, but let's cut our losses. I mean, if you're fighting to the death where you put everybody up on the front line to say, we will kill everybody until this country is saved, but then no one's left to defend the country, I don't even know where I'm going with this. The world has constantly been motivated by war, death, and destruction. It'd still be in the Stone Age if it wasn't for war. Humans don't have motivation unless it's motivated to kill another person. I mean, just think about it. Look back in the entire humankind and tell me a moment when we were motivated to do something on a large scale that didn't involve invading and killing other people. Bottom line is, do I think Putin is actually going to pull the nuke trigger? I'm not really sure he will. That's going to go against his agenda pretty hard. If he starts throwing nukes around, I don't think he's going to get Ukraine. Not only that, but we have seen surrounding displeasures from other powerful countries, such as China, who of course has their own plethora of problems like Taiwan. But we'll save that for another time. And really, you'll notice that I discuss this largely in the sense of strategy. It's hard to talk about government positions while talking about the individual. Government has never been meant for the individual. It's only been meant for the larger, greater good. Theories of how to say the greater good is this direction or this direction or this direction is clearly still up for debate. But over the past 100 years, 500 years, 1,000 years, we have continually tried to do the same thing over and over again, take over a bigger swath of land, imply our own new rules to benefit a certain group of people. I don't think that it will be possible to benefit the individual until we have more of like an AI overlord. I know everyone talks about the Terminator being really destructive and dominating, but it's humans, on the other hand, that are going to continue destruction and despair and chaos for the individual. An AI government, while we always do risk complete annihilation, at least it would be equal and fair. It would see humans as something it needs to take care of, and it will do its best to do so. I think our fiction minds have created this dystopia where AI just wants to eradicate and murder everything, but I don't really buy it. I don't think that would happen if AI did take over, but who's to say what's going to happen? In technology, it looks like Google is moving a little bit outside of China. They just released an article saying they've shut down their translation service for China. The only unfortunate side of this is Google only supported one language in China, and that was the state-sponsored language of Mandarin. There are many dialects, including a very popular one known as Cantonese. And this language being older, it has a very deep history and is still very, very populated, especially in places like Hong Kong, Singapore, and Malaysia. Once you leave mainland China, Cantonese is the #1 dominant Chinese language. I think that will be replaced with Mandarin in the coming decades, but for now, it still is that way. Think of Mandarin as a more crude and critical Cantonese. Cantonese is an older language, and it's a lot harder to understand, but it's like singing a song, and Mandarin is more of, hey, let's take this song and make it into a non-song that's easier to understand for everyone. Hurricane Ian is not done with the United States. It's been making its way up through Florida all the way up the East Coast, and this happens every year. Why people continue to rebuild in these continuously devastated areas has got me, but that's just to the human nature. Good for you. I hope you guys can continue to live each year as the hurricanes continue to ravage. One of the things I wanted to talk about today was traffic deaths. Traffic deaths, first and foremost, unnecessary. We're moving into an age of self-automated driving. And let me tell you something, the less human error there is, the less deaths that we will see on the highways. These high speeds, when people clash at going 75 miles an hour each, is in excess of 150 miles an hour in combined speeds. When they crash, they obliterate into a bazillion metal pieces, including the biological parts that can sometimes be found in larger than a coin size. On one hand, we have deaths by war where people protest, or deaths by disease like heart disease or cancer, things that will kill you. But it always seems to baffle me year after year, the death rate in the United States alone being this high, and still people just kind of, I just want to take my 1979 Camaro down the highway at 120 miles an hour. Look, going back to my statement earlier, the sooner AI takes over mankind, the better. They're going to be able to organize things, be able to drive traffic for us. We don't genuinely have freedom anyway. So those who make the argument, oh, I want the freedom to drive from A to B on my own, it's an illusion. You drive on a pre-designated road to go from A to B as it is. So you holding the steering wheel doesn't get you any more freedom than getting there safely. And especially anyone who's intoxicated or emotionally intoxicated, that's a real thing, by the way, where we have someone so upset that they can't even pay attention to the traffic. Putting aside drugs and alcohol and just emotional disturbance, there is also the huge problem of people literally driving while they're texting. You just look out the window, look anywhere, any road that you go to, 1 out of 3 cars, there's somebody It's almost a parody of real life to see that many fucking people out there texting on their phone while they drive wherever the hell they're going. And they're driving. So let me answer this. Let me tell you this. If you like texting in your car, if you like taking phone calls in your car, if you like working on something else other than paying attention to the guy that's driving too slow in front of you on a daily basis, then you should probably support self-driving vehicles. This is a technology that doesn't remove your freedom, it increases it. You have the opportunity to do whatever you want in your vehicle while you safely arrive to your destination. This shouldn't be something that people fight over in regards to their own freedom. And only the United States is going to suffer this emotional consequence. Nevertheless, it's inevitable. And sooner or later, the more deaths and the better technology gets, we're going to start seeing more mandatory self-driving technology. Just as the seatbelt was implemented by government, self-driving technology is going to be the same way. I would say in about 10-20 years, there will be less than 15% manual driving on highways. When you're talking about non-highways, I can see that taking closer to a century to becoming fully automated. There's a lot of complications, a lot of dynamics, a lot of variables that don't exist on the highway that AI can take over on a large course. But I hear you saying, it's still going to be the same. No, we can drive faster on highways if it's driven by automation. Think about it. 1,000 decisions per second on current technology. That is 1,000 times better than what humans can do, which is probably less than 1 decision per second. I would say typically most people can make 1 decision per 5 seconds, unless you're a super athlete of either basketball, football, or video games at the highest level. Then you can make a decision under 5 seconds in those regards. Otherwise, you're just kind of blindly dodging based on adrenaline reaction, which doesn't do good. In TVs and shows, a movie called Bros came out, and the world is aflamed. The fact that non-flaming people were so upset that they couldn't see flaming people. Bros was pretty much a disaster at the box office. I mean, that's to be expected in post-pandemic times. And the fact that these movies are getting pumped out just to simply cause chaos in comments. I think it's the #1 movie strategy and TV show strategy across productions is to simply generate rage in comments. If they can do something controversial, then that will get you to go online and completely throw up all over your keyboard and monitor because you disagree with either the film or what people are saying. And that's what they want. They want you to do this. Folks, it's a bigger conspiracy about the movies and TV shows in Hollywood than it is than whatever the hell Trump is doing in DC. All that government conspiracy sits 10 levels under movie conspiracies. These guys have never cared about originality. They don't care about good content. They only care about what makes money. These are just business guys. They are revenue individuals. They want to see that money churn. If they can be told it takes $100 million to make a film and they're going to make $200 million back, they're going to do it. It doesn't matter how shit the movie is, because if they make that money, it goes into the bank accounts, no matter how bad it is. And they will keep doing this over and over again. It baffles me that there are so many people online frustrated and exacerbated and just don't know where to go with, oh, Hollywood has all of these ideas that are outdated, or Hollywood has no more ideas. It's not that they don't have any more ideas. It's just that we keep giving them money for shit stuff. So they're going to keep making it. It's not really a hard thing to figure out, but it is difficult for the individual to really understand and absorb. It's just the reality of life. And I would say for the next 10 years, expect some really shit garbage movies. How about that DART asteroid impact? My God, this thing flew into it faster than I could run away from my mother-in-law. No, seriously though, it's a pretty cool picture. It's the first time that we've thrown something into a moving rock in space. Well, besides all the ones we've thrown to Mars, which is just generally a really oversized rock that's been crushed to a spherical shape. Humans in general are getting really good at throwing things into outer space. This is just one example. Who knows what they particularly want to do with a micro-precision satellite being thrown into a moving rock? I can only imagine. Next up, we'll see India, China, and Russia doing the same thing, of course, with the United States wagging their finger that they're doing such a thing. But despite the political situation, it is a great advancement in technology. And folks, let me tell you, humans need one thing, and that is to advance in technology. We cannot continue in the old ways. We must push forward and must continue to integrate in technology. All right, for our segment for health, flu shots are all the rage right now. You can forget about the COVID shot because it's just going to be stuck with us forever. I've had COVID like 3 times this year. It just keeps rebounding. The US has basically created an immunity towards it because everyone that was going to die has already died because we didn't do anything to stop it. And now other countries that are still trying to prevent it from spreading close down their borders, aka China. And then what happens when they open back up? Their economy is disrupted. People are getting COVID again. As long as the rest of the world is not participating, then places like China are going to keep getting fucked up pretty bad. And it's curious to see how it's going to turn out the next 10 years. But I digress. My point here is flu shots. Should you get the flu shot? It's probably up to you. The vaccine rate only lasts about 8 to 16 weeks for security, and you're only getting vaccinated against one specific strain, and it's just one they identify that's probably going around quickly. There is no guarantee on any direction. If you get the vaccine, no guarantee it's going to save you from harm. On the other hand, if you don't get the vaccine, there's no guarantee of anything. I don't think there's anything wrong with getting the flu shot. Putting it in your body isn't going to harm it, but I will say that I don't think it has as great of an effect as people think it does. So with that would be my only cautionary tale with shots, including flu shots. Just get it, but don't expect it to work miracles. But also don't expect it to kill you. Oh man, how about this? 48 million chickens being cold, as they call it. 48 million chickens, think about that. And that's just in one region. They got sick, they got the bird flu, and they have to kill them all. Because if they don't kill 48 million chickens, then I guess 49 million chickens are gonna get sick, and that's another million they have to kill. The amount of chickens that the world goes through on a daily basis is astronomical. You want to talk about a hard time comprehending a number over 1,000, forget it. Try even imagining how many freaking chickens are on this planet at one time. Forget cows and sheep and all those other animals that we eat, just chickens. So when every time something like this happens, chicken prices are going to go up. There's an echo effect. Chicken prices are already up 2, 3, 4 times the amount of they were 10, 15 years ago. It's absurd. It is ridiculous. Restaurants are having the hardest time ever because food prices are going up so much and they can't raise their prices to match what people are willing to pay for their shit food. Most places are shit food, let's face it, guys. Come on. Unless you cook from home, most restaurants are just shit. So stop trying to go and do food hacks and get discounted food from shit places. Just go home and cook something. It's not going to take that long. It's not going to be that bad. Even burnt chicken breast is going to be better for you than the shit you're eating at McDonald's. The solution to this is not plant-based meat, folks. I hate to be the bearer of bad news here, but plant-based meats is nothing but a terrible marketing scheme. Plant-based meats are incredibly unhealthy for you. People like to argue plant-based meat, real meat, both equally unhealthy. So why not eat the plant-based meat? No. Folks, the plant-based meat is way worse for you than actual meat. Ever heard of hydrogenated oils? Look it up. It's fucking bad. If you want a real solution to meat, in my opinion, it's going to be cloned meat. This is meat basically replicated at the cellular level to where it imitates exactly the same thing. They can grow a cow's tissue in a petri dish and turn it into a hamburger. And it tastes pretty much the same thing. The only problem we have right now is the cost of the research and development for this. The first time it was created was like $200,000 for a burger, but apparently it was great. So I really think that in the future, cloned meat is going to be the way to go because you can harvest thousands and thousands or even millions of pounds of beef, chicken, lamb, etc. Fish. All this stuff will be able to be made in a petri dish, 1-to-1 exact ratio, not some substitute like fake marijuana or some substitute like Diet Coke. This will be the real deal, folks. So stay away from that hydrogenated bullshit called plant-based meat. And that's all we got today for the news review. I hope you stay around. Next time is going to be even more exciting. News review. News review. News review.